Are 6-year terms good for the Pennfield School District? That is a good question, and to give everybody a better understanding of why we believe 6-year terms are harmful to our school district, we'll present facts that will demonstrate why the Pennfield Board of Education trustees should return to 4-year terms. First, the boring stuff. A little history, because to understand where we need to go, we need to know where we have been and correct the mistakes of the past. On March 19, 2012, the Pennfield Board of Education trustees passed a resolution that increased the length of the elected terms from 4 years to 6 years. That resolution was passed on a vote of 5-0, as this was allowed by the newly amended Michigan Public Act 233. The first trustees who were elected to 6-year terms took office on January 1, 2013, and they both completed their full 6-year terms as highlighted in green. Coincidentally, that is the last election cycle where all the elected trustees served their full 6-year terms. The 2014 election cycle had 3 trustees elected to 6-year terms. 2 completed their full terms as highlighted in green, and 1 of the trustees resigned, and that is highlighted in pink. The 2016 and 2018 election cycles each had 2 trustees elected to 6-year terms, and 3 of the 4 have resigned, as highlighted in pink, with 1 trustee currently still serving their 6-year term, and that is highlighted in blue. The 2020 election cycle had 4 trustees elected, 3 to 6-year terms, and 1 to a 2-year partial term. 2 of those trustees have resigned and are also highlighted in pink. The 2022 election cycle had 3 trustees elected, 2 to 6-year terms, and 1 to a 2-year term. 2 of the trustees have resigned, and again, they are highlighted in pink. As these charts have indicated, each passing election cycle produces more and more resignations. Looking ahead at the upcoming 2024 election cycle, there will be 2 candidates running for full 6-year terms, an additional candidate running for a 4-year partial term, and another candidate running for a 2-year partial term. The 2-year and 4-year partial terms are due to the recent resignations. By reviewing the past elections, we can see the disturbing trend that has emerged. As we mentioned earlier, not since the 2012 election cycle has there been a cycle where all the elected trustees served the full term. Overall, 6 elected trustees have resigned prior to completing their 6-year terms. 2 elected trustees resigned before completing a partial 2-year term, and 4 are currently serving their elected 6-year terms. Like we stated, this is a very disturbing trend. In March of 2012, a trustee resigned, and it would be another 7 years before a trustee of the Board of Education would resign, and that occurred in July of 2019. Since that time, there have been 8 resignations in the last 52 months. Now let's take a comparison of the 6-year terms versus the 4-year terms. Under the current 6-year terms, and since the resolution was adopted in March of 2012, out of the 7 elected trustees that could have served a full 6-year term, only 4 trustees served their full term. More bluntly, that is 57% of our elected trustees serving a full 6-year term. And we know if you receive a 57% on any test, that would be considered a failing grade. Are we willing to accept failing grades by our trustees, our elected leaders? There have been 8 resignations in the last 52 months, and that includes 3 in just the last 10 months. 6 of those trustees were serving 6-year terms, and 2 trustees were serving 2-year partial terms. Neither of the trustees that were elected to the 2-year partial terms completed the full 2-year term. To put this in perspective, the Board of Education has appointed more trustees, 8, than have been elected by the voters, 7, during this same time frame. Now let's take a look if we had 4-year terms. 80% of the elected trustees would have served a full 4-year term. That would be a 23% increase from the current 6-year terms. There were 2 trustees who resigned after they had served 4 years of their 6-year terms, and there would have been no need for the elections of trustees to 2-year partial terms if we were at 4-year terms. To be fair, we need to consider a few things. A lot is asked of our elected Board of Education trustees, and sometimes life happens, so they need to resign for personal or professional reasons. Maybe the 6-year term is more than they expected when they sought our votes. We can only imagine that if the board would have remained at 4-year terms, would the 3 trustees that resigned during the 3rd year have stayed the 6 to 8 months to complete a 4-year term? Maybe they were looking at the 30 to 36 months left on their 6-year term and chose to resign. We have to wonder, why are only 1 or 2 candidates submitting letters of interest for the board vacancies? We don't know the answers to these questions, but clearly 5 resignations in 24 months and 3 occurring in the last 10 months is not the answer. Everything we have shown has led us to one conclusion. The Pennfield School District cannot continue to be led by a revolving door of Board of Education trustees. The 6-year terms have clearly not worked. And remember, Board of Education appointees are not elected. Furthermore, between the year 2000 and 2012, there were only 3 Board of Education trustees that resigned. And we've had 3 resignations in the last 10 months. So how do we return to 4-year terms for our Board of Education trustees? We call the current board members. We email the board members. We ask them to place it on the ballot so that the voters can decide. Because frankly, I'm tired of seeing all the appointees to the board without any input from us, the voters. Thank you.